Now, of course, in the storyline for our animation, this is going to be the winning points at the end of the game. And in order to show that, we're going to create a scoreboard right in this background area that shows the clock counting down to 0, and of course, the home team is trailing just by a single point. That's going to add a lot of nice drama, and of course, we're going to need to build that scoreboard. So let's start things out by setting up a layer for our scoreboard. I might even go ahead and hide the football animation just for the moment so we can work right in that clean area. And let me go down to the uprights layer and we'll just insert a layer right above that we'll call our scoreboard layer. That way it'll be behind the football when we bring it back. Now what this is really going to do is it's going to give us a chance to take a look at a couple of other drawing tools. My scoreboard is just going to be a big rectangle with rounded corners. And we can do that with our normal rectangle tool here. I'm going to choose the rectangle tool and I'm going to set up some properties for it. Now I'd like the background to be dark, so we'll leave the fill as black. And I'd like an outline that's maybe not quite white. Maybe I'll go for a light gray here. I want the outline to be nice and thick. I'll try 2. We can always change it later. And as you see down at the bottom, we have an option of adding rounding to the rectangle corners. By default, if you just change this one value, it'll update all the other ones to match unless you unlock them. And I can just use the slider here to add a little bit of rounding. Now, that's not too bad. Let's go ahead and draw a rectangle out here. There we can see our rectangle, and it definitely has rounded corners. Now, I'd actually like a little more rounding, and here comes the problem. When we draw with the normal rectangle tool, what we get is a rectangle with rounded corners, but really this is just a vector. If I use my normal selection tool on this, I can go into the corners and reshape them, but it's probably going to be kind of sloppy. Well, there's actually a better way to do this with the new primitive tools. So let's double click on our old rectangle. I'm just going to hit delete and get rid of it. And let's go back up to our tool settings and let's try out the other tool. Now you can see we have actually a primitive for both the rectangle and the oval. I'm going to choose the rectangle one, and we have very similar properties. I still have my outline, my fill, and my stroke. And I'm going to add in a little bit of rounding just like we did before. We'll go ahead and draw out our rectangle. And we get a similar object. But this one actually has control points on it, and that's where these two tools differ. My primitive tool actually makes something that stays a rectangle, and I can go in and edit the rectangle properties even after I've drawn it. Now I'm going to switch over to my normal selection tool, and you see these little points at the corners. I can actually drag those points down and change the radius settings on the corner. I can also go back and change the radius settings right here. And this allows me full access to whatever radius I want. Now obviously it does make it a lot easier to work with this as a rectangle, and you don't have to worry about it becoming misshaped as you edit it. Now just for fun, let's go and look at the primitive oval tool. It's very similar. I'll just draw over here in some empty space, and you'll see of course we get an oval to start with. But you'll notice we have some additional options here available as well. I have an inner radius as well as an outer radius. And as you can see, that creates something like a donut shape. And we also have control over the start and end angle. Now that actually splits it in two, and I end up with something that looks a little bit more like a C. Now in both cases, if you were to break apart these images, they'll end up just like all of the other normal things that we would draw with our regular oval and rectangle tools. And since we don't need any C's in our animation, I'm just going to delete that oval. But I did want a second rounded rectangle inside of the first one, and that would house the clock for our scoreboard. So I'm going to switch back to the rectangle primitive tool. I still have all the same settings from before, and I'm just going to drag out a smaller rectangle up here at the top. Now let me use my selection tool. I'm going to turn off snapping so that I can move this away a little bit easier. There, it should kind of be in the top there. And in this case, I actually want a smaller radius, so I'm just going to adjust that. And now we have something that looks a little bit more like a scoreboard.